Hello, hello, hello. Thank you everyone for joining us and watching our first episode of our In the Booth podcast, right? In the Booth is going to be me in the booth. That's where I work and I take my calls, and I'm going to have some amazing guests. And today, for our first episode, we have the spectacular Dr. Ewa Lasich. And she is really one of the most empowering person in the healthcare industry, and she has done many things in terms of sharing her knowledge and empowering women in terms of leadership, and in terms of empowering women in terms of empowering others, right? And really that's something that we don't talk enough about, is allowing people to teach people how to empower others. And thank you. Happy to have you, Dr. Tklasich. We'll be tackling some questions around her new book uh, that just came out, and really is one of the main topic for today. Is going to be empowered leadership, leading with clarity, community, and courage. Right. And welcome, Dr. Ewa Tklasich. Happy to have you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here, Sebastian, and for the invitation. I'm glad that you reached out and we connected, and I look forward to the discussion. I'm sure the audience is going to enjoy the topic and the most relevant parts of it in such a dynamic environment we are right now in.
Spectacular. Thank you for being here, and let's really go through our main question, which is empowered leadership. And empowering itself is something that we say on a day-to-day basis, but really the actual thing in action, to get there is very blurry, and most of the time it's really misleading, right? How do we empower people? How does empowering uh becomes a thing? How do you know that you are empowering um, as a leader, and how does it make sense? So can you just talk more about empowering and why is it a valuable thing for you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for spotlighting my book. My book launched on September 9th. It's available on Amazon for those who would like to read, as well as in at Barnes and Nobles. So please go in and read. This book was really my journey, presenting the journey of coming to this country, getting education, and then diving into industry and really benefiting from the wonderful leaders, the wonderful knowledge, and the changing environment. And when we're thinking about empowered leadership is really allow others to become the best they can be. And I've been so blessed with mentors and leaders that I've worked with that allowed me to be authentic self, but also challenged me and made me grow and asked me to grow and they gave me opportunities to grow. And I think we often think about leaders being, oh, you have to have a position, you have to be a CEO or have a fancy title, but really leadership or empowered leadership, it can be at every level. You can do it at your community level, you can do it at your work, you can do it at your school. It doesn't require you to have that fancy title. But when I think about empowered leadership, is really giving the knowledge and allowing others to reach for the highest potential that they can reach and working with them on those aspects where they really need development, working with them on the presence, allowing them to fail. We don't often talk about the failure is the best teaching environment or a tool that we all as leaders have, and really allowing them to create their own self in whatever that might be. Not everyone is gonna be a manager, wants to be a leader or move into leadership, but even individual contributors can have quite an impact on the organization, be quite influential and drive towards the best organization or community performance. So, for those of you listening, I highly recommend to really think about it. What do you want in your life? And then find mentors that can help you become authentic self, help become on the journey that you want to be, and challenge you and never allow you to settle, because you can be only empowered when you are being challenged. You can be only empowered when you know that sometimes you are at the edge of a mountain or a cliff and you need to take that leap, and knowing and trusting yourself that you're not going to fall. So that's what I would say for empowered leadership. And for myself, seeing so many of my former employees or current employees taking the next step and becoming their own, becoming excellent leaders and innovators and thought leaders. It's been really a wonderful journey, and I think for those of us who have been leaders, that's the most rewarding part of being a leader and making a difference, because you see others. If you can teach them, if you can really encourage them and support them, there's nothing better for a legacy than someone coming under your wings and become the best they can be.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked about wanting things. You talk about mentoring. Really, if you could also distill empowered leadership into a principle for a leader, and how should a leader practice, like empowering within a team or within their day-to-day life? How can they really live an empowering life while they empower others and themselves as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, being a mentor, it's a very important part of any leader journey. And you first are the mentee, and you learn all of the best aspects from or the best tools from the leaders, previous leaders before you, and then you enter that realm, and you always hope that the legacy you're gonna leave is that you left that ladder behind. And I mean that literal ladder, meaning that when you are climbing up, you're bringing others with you, because there's nothing more empowering than continuously helping others to be at the table. And we need every person and every perspective to be at the table. But I want to mention one thing. When it comes to, very often I get to be asked, can you be my mentor? And I think there is also a lot of responsibility on the mentees. First of all, you have to be ready. Being a mentee, being mentored by someone who you admire or someone that you think can help you to get to the next level, it's also a lot of work. And when you're going to ask someone, first of all, know that it's going to be a commitment. They're going to hold you accountable. Second of all, they're going to give you feedback sometimes that maybe no one else gave you. They're going to be your mirror. They're going to tell you how you behaved in a meeting, or if they are outside of your work environment, they're going to listen in and give you an honest, objective comments, perspective on how you are performing at your job, based on how you're describing, or what is the next step you should be doing. We talk a lot about right now about brand, right? Everyone has a brand. So mentor will help you develop that brand, but also will tell you that it's your responsibility to keep the brand up, and your responsibility is for your career. You cannot ask anyone to be driving a career. If you don't drive it, no one will, because we all have our responsibility. You can only empower someone to do if they also allow you to do that. Because if I'm pouring into someone, that's my personal time. That's my personal time away from doing it in my duties or my personal life. So I think you have to recognize that empowering others is allowing them to succeed, fail, be their authentic self. But if they're not willing to do the work, empowering is not going to help. Mentoring is not going to help. And so I think a lot of people use this word, but they don't realize that the empowered part of the empowered leadership is really knowing that this is work on both sides. Whoever is in the middle of the journey and those who are supporting you throughout the journey. And you have to be respectful. And only then you can be empowered to do whatever you need to do. And for the leaders to empower, to present empowered leadership. And the last piece that I want to mention is, it's on all of us leaders to also leave the career spectrum or leave the industry the way we want to see it. Because if we don't, this is our opportunity. If we don't take that step and create the environment that we want to be successful in, no one will, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
this is the distinction. The mentee needs to be ready, and the leader needs to be ready as well, and take the accountability and create the environment and bring people along and be responsible for it and be accountable for it as well.
yeah, yeah. Amazing, amazing point. Being ready, having a brand, both for the mentee and for the empowering as well. Creating an environment, which is very important. I'm glad you pointed that out because people expect people to become what they're teaching, but if you don't really set up a structure for them to blossom, if we can use this word, they will fail, and you will set them up for to for failure in many ways. Um, one of the things that really I value the most as a software engineer, as someone who always wants to, uh, find difficult things, to build or to do or, to partner with. There is this idea of imposter syndrome. And I think you wrote a lot about it. And this is one of my amazing topics to talk about to our very young developers as well. Really, can you really talk about what imposter syndrome is? How do you see it? And how do you create some kind of like pivotal moment in your life to deal with self-doubt and and fuel your leadership as well. And I think it's not just for someone that is new in the field, but everyone can deal with imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. And I will say this, everyone has imposter syndrome. I was recently on a webinar, and they actually said that the most number of people who have imposter syndrome are those high achievers, which struck me because I consider myself a high achiever, and you are a high achiever, right? So being in the startup. So what that means is that we always doubt ourselves because we know there's going to be a lot of work. So you have to really have that right mindset. But imposter syndrome is really believing being in a position or being somewhere, even in our personal lives, and don't believing that we should be there, and always worrying that someone is going to find out that we shouldn't be there. So it's something that we all think about. Women are more impacted than men. High achievers are more impacted than others as well. But pretty much everyone throughout their career, or even in their personal life, is gonna have that self-doubt. And so it's very important to recognize it. There are four different aspects of it. One is really it's the Superman, Superwoman. You want to do everything by yourself. So many women are in the trap of they continuously go to work. I mean, they have to work, they have to take care of their kids. Very often they have to take care of their elderly parents. So they are always doing everything by themselves, and they don't rely on the support of others, like their spouse, for example, their partner in crime, and saying, help me here because I am doing a lot. I am now on a 20 hours of work on a 24-hour day. You have to step in. The other pieces, which very often all of us are coming in, is being perfectionist. I think a lot of young people always want to do everything right. Well, I don't think I've read a leadership book or been on a leadership a podcast or webinar or seminar, whatever you want to call it, where they didn't say 80% should be enough. That doesn't mean that you should do a bad job, but if you think that you're going to be ready for everything 100%, you will never achieve anything, right? And I think we all have to realize this, that sometimes 80% is just enough to launch you. Sometimes 80% is just enough to put your toe in the water and go somewhere else outside of your boundaries. And I think if we always worry about that we are not 100% done with something, or we are not ready for something, we will never do anything. And then the other, so there's a couple more ways of being doing everything by yourself. For example, the soloist. Many of us again have it, and especially young people, then they try to become going into manager or the leader position, believing that someone else cannot do something. It's not a way then to take it and do it yourself versus teaching someone. This is where the empowering come in, right? The empowerment comes in, you delivering to someone your knowledge. And I think the soloist very often comes in, especially in the time of stress. I know that I've been very often stressed, put timelines on your head, and you're like, oh, it's going to take me only an hour to do this, and I have to spend 5 explaining that to someone. But if you don't do it, what does it mean next time when you only have half an hour to do something and you haven't taught someone? So I think we all have to come in and think about it as well. So the imposter syndrome is not knowing, but it's also on us leaders to make sure that we help individuals to work through, give them those aspects, and work through what we really need to do. And again, I want to mention imposter syndrome. We all have it. I have it. There's places where I have a lack of confidence, and I have to think about it. What do I do, and how do I pivot? And this is where then I'm going to tell you, people, when they feel lack of confidence, they stop doing stuff. They don't progress. The best part for confidence, for lack of it, is start doing exactly what you don't want to do, because it switches your mind, right? It switches your mind. The other pieces, exercise, find a way, or meditate, find a way to release that stress, because your mental health is what's driving. And the final one, very often lack of confidence leads to anxiety. Stop and think. And there are many different aspects. There is like counting backwards or saying counting from 5 to 1 and launching yourself. There is some others spotting different things for starting with a certain letter and so forth. So changing your mind perspective. But the one that worked for me was the 5 second rule, that which it was a book written on. It is really, if you don't think you want to do something, you count to 5, or you do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you go and do it, because that's what's moving your brain, and it's not allowing your brain to really go away and say, oh, I don't want to do it. Now do it. And especially do that in the points when you know there's going to be difficult, because what is the alternative? Right? You will not do something, you will not get an opportunity, you will not leap. Now everyone is using the word leap everywhere. So you have to leap in, you have to leap to something and really take it on. So for everyone, imposter syndrome is normal. If you don't feel imposter syndrome, that means that you are not challenging yourself. If you feel imposter syndrome, now let's work through this. Let's say this is normal and work through and start doing whatever you need to get done.
Amazing. Really, it's something I deal with, I mean, on a daily basis. Whenever I take a project, I take a vertical, or I find really an issue and imposter syndrome, just asking yourself, you know, what do I need to do to become the person or the thing
Mm-hmm.
I'm building? And really, that's one question I ask myself personally. For me to actually start building that thing, it's like, what do I need to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order for me to become that person that builds this product, right? And let's get a bit more technical, right? Let's talk more about healthcare analytics decisions, kind of like balance between data and politics, and how do you ensure analytics and is not being influenced or drive by just leaderships itself?
Yeah, great question. So in the era of producing a lot of data, and I mean healthcare analytics, so we are producing data continuously, right? I mean, all of our little rings have a ring on. Some people have iWatches. If you like it or not, you are producing a lot of health data, meaning it continuously checks your pulse, it checks your levels of your pressure, it counts your steps, it knows when you're exercising, and so forth. So it's continuously creating that. There's also, every time, for those of you who will not know, every time you go to a physician office or you go to a pharmacy, you leave a footprint as well. So there's a lot of data around you, and it's how do you analyze it? It's we are living in a wonderful time when there is a lot of data. It's big data, and it's growing exponentially, and we have a lot of tools for processing it and then doing analysis. And it's really started to inform the how we consume healthcare, what policies are being designed, how we are paying for healthcare, how physicians, how healthcare providers and health systems are making those decisions. So it's a really exciting time. The one thing that I would say is, as with anything, the more information you have, the more you have to always think about biases. And I think we're going to be talking a little bit about AI shortly. But it is a thinking about the biases about from where the data is coming from, what populations not only are in your data, but which ones are not. Very often, minorities or those who don't have a commercial insurance are not represented in the healthcare data. So how do you overcome this? How do you supplement it, or how do you draw conclusions that are representable to others? And I think that's the responsibility component.
Yes, very well. And I'm glad that you touched on the AI point. We're gonna get there very soon in the next question. One of the main thing I wanted to ask really it's the privacy before we get to the AI system, right?
Okay.
So we have the data, RWE leader as you are, you understand fully what the data is and what's in that data connected to the users themselves. Now, in order for us to utilize that data and for us to implement these amazing technologies that we have today, how should we look at privacy and compliance really in order for us to, you know, create this bridge between data and the way we're handling data today with the privacy layers that we have and the integration of AI systems. How do we make the leap and how do we look at privacy as a thing that needs to exist or maybe a myth that sometimes a lot of leaders they kind of like look away?
Yeah, great question. I think that's an interesting question, and it's probably also becomes more philosophical. However, I always ask any of my team members or anyone who I work with, would you like your sensitive information or someone from your family member be out there? And we are talking about medical, right? And we all know that a lot of that very often um, some pieces of information floating can impact your employment, can impact your personal, um, uh, I guess, personal and professional life later because that information is there. If you provide the consent and you know what you are disclosing, that's a very different thing when it comes to privacy because you have provided consent, and the consent is usually gathered via either in-person consent signature, or now there's a lot of electronic. So that's perfectly fine. However, when you are thinking about data that is de-identified or anonymized, which a lot of data sets are, you have to be very mindful to make sure that by a mistake or just by simple error or not understanding the privacy stipulations, that we are not releasing information that can impact someone's um, uh, life, or that person can be easily de-identified. What I mean by it is very simple. Very often there are information that is very public. For example, our birth dates and our death dates are are public. You can go in to your state department, and you can see how many people were born, how many children were born on a given date, as well as how many people have passed away. So this is private. This is very public information. If you're talking about rare diseases, where you might have very few patients, if there is only, let's say, 20 patients in the state of Pennsylvania with certain condition, and you know when they were born, and you can look up when they were born or what zip code, or the analysis reveals the zip code, you can quickly start identifying them if there's anything in the data set. So let's say if there is a date of birth, or even if there's a year of birth, which often is reported, and there's only 20 people impacted, there is nothing preventing you to going in and checking that. So I want to be very mindful. I'm not telling, I want to be mindful. This is not what you should be doing. You have to be always very mindful of what level of aggregation you have. What do you do with the data? And what is the consequence of it? Because that's because you can do something, that doesn't mean that it is not going to be harmful to at the end once it's released, and even if it's not intentional, right? Even if it's not intentional. So very often there are organizations that allow to either certify your tools, or review the analysis of the data sets that are being shared, to ensure that the level of aggregation is appropriate and protects where it might be, where the risk might happen. And that's called the risk assessment. And they really provide you with information on what variables should not be in your data set, or what you should not be doing analysis on, in order to prevent any or limit the risk of re-identifying an individual. And I do want to mention that again, you always have to remember that it could be you, right? It could be me who all of a sudden is de-identified, and would we ever want to do this? So I think if you live with that principle, it makes it much easier to not to reveal someone else's privacy when they have not given consent for.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, I'm always learning a lot whenever I'm having this conversation with you, because these things are needed as someone who's building products, right? There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
developers out there who are probably listening, and really this is something not just for compliance, right? But as a builder, it's, yourself, you should be understanding of these things, right? Just like Dr. Lasich said, it could be you, right? I mean, we all are able to have those diseases, and we are human, and really it's not about giving them the best intelligent responses, or service, or creating the best system, but really it's about building for human, really. And that's my biggest take on the privacy issue. But looking forward, how can us as leaders prepare for a world where AI will have to live with compliance, right? And
Mm-hmm.
will be interchangeable. And I think they both need to coexist. And really, how can you empower, you become like an empowered leader within that age of sovereign system? And how can this same ecosystem of empowering others and empowering women within the workspace and empowering other leaders as well live within the AI world as well too? How can these two coexist? And what is the best way for you
Wow,
to look at
that's
that?
a quite a question, but I think it's a very important question. First of all, let's talk about the gender disparities when it comes to STEM and technology, which you are in. There is definitely a lot of more work that we have to do, and we have to be mindful. And I think all of us have to be mindful if we want more women as well as minority individuals being in the room and shaping technology. It's going to be very important, because without that voice, how do you create devices that are helpful or treating women's health, right? If they are designed by individuals who don't understand what those are, or how do you design any other tools related to underrepresented groups when they are not in the room? So I think the voice is always very important, and we need to be very mindful of this. And I think empowered leadership is realizing that perspective needs to be there, that if you don't have that perspective, you are creating biases, and even if it's unintentional bias, you are introducing that bias immediately. So that's what I would say from that. There is also responsibility for all of us women leaders, where we have to encourage and we have to ensure that we bring those underrepresented groups from any part into the room. And I'm going to say one thing. I often see many men actually are very mindful and bring in women into the room because they have daughters, right? So they are building that consciously. They know that their daughters will not have a career if they don't do this. So I think women need to do the same thing and be very conscious. That's because I am at the table. My responsibility is not only stay at the table, but also bring others to the table that normally wouldn't have a chance to be at the table. And I think we have to do that. So we have to make the room. The second thing is, I think is also on all of us women as well. If we don't fight for what we want, we will not have it. And you see that the older generation of women leaders were much more feisty, right? They were fighting for because they needed to do. I think right now we don't see that necessarily, or maybe it's not that we don't see that. I think women are more likely not to pursue it, and that's why organizations as Women Tech Network or other WILDA, which is women data, leadership, technology types of organizations are existing, because there has to be an acknowledgement that we need to bring those young women along, and we need to mentor them, and we need to give them opportunities to do that. And I am on a board. I'm on the executive board for the Women Tech Network, and I think this is a very important group where worldwide um, uh, women are being brought in and benefiting from individuals like myself and other women and men that are associated. So that's going to be one. The second thing is, as we are bringing AI, as we are changing the environment, we have to also think about the biases when it comes to, like I mentioned earlier, the data and the biases related to the development of those frameworks. So we talked about the compliance, but there is also understanding how these models are built. What data are they ingesting? What are they trained on? How often are they updated? How often is the data updated? Because if trends might change, I mean, I am an economist. We usually talk about structural change. When a trend changes so much that even if you are using the best model that is the most stable, your inputs are very different. So the model is outdated, right? Your outcomes are going to be very skewed. And I think the opportunities for many of us are going to be really talking and scrutinizing the processes and making sure that we understand each step of what goes in and where the levers are where we have to do a check. So that manual check, human review will need to happen. So we call it human in the loop. And for all of you young developers and young listeners here listening, it's not only the technical skill, but it's also understanding the entire workflow and the input and the output and what you are trying to do with it. So you have to really understand that. And then knowing what it comes in, knowing how each step works and what comes out, and scrutinizing the answer. We have to be very mindful scrutinizing the answer, because that's when When you will probably go into Google and you can Google yourself and you find out things that are not right about you, right? But that's because it's pulling information from different places and it's not extrapolating. So we are the human as human here, the human in the loop, or the human with the machine versus human against the machine, or vice versa. It's where what is really important, and that's where compliance is going to be important, because understanding what it's the levels at which are ethical, what is by law appropriate, and then what does it mean to comply with privacy. I think it's going to be important. But while you can train your model, it doesn't have the same understanding and often empathy and understanding of ethical components that drives it. So that's a little bit on where I think about it, and how these worlds are coming in, and how we as human beings or as individuals can actually chip in and help move the innovation forward.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for your amazing output. Really, that really is what was my last question. I will not really uh, ask you too much. We can have another call really to go into details in terms of like AI implementation and why really we have to have that human in the loop aspect of it, and why is it AI itself is not enough in order for us to get the proper intelligence, and create and advance in many, many aspects of innovation. Thank you, Doctor. It's really, really, truly was a pleasure having you again. We will have some more questions, and I will, have that to you next from our comments, and then from other developers that will have questions. And I think women also will be very, very happy to see you and to hear from you.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Sebastian. I'm glad that we were able to meet and talk about these important topics. Thank you.
Definitely. And where can they find you? So what is the best way someone can reach out to you? And you talk about a lot of empowered leadership. We know where to find your book, Barnes and Noble. Amazon has empowered leadership, which is right there, ready for them. It's quite one of the amazing book in terms of talking about one of the key points that we talked about today. But what are the other ways they can find you?
Yes, they can find me on LinkedIn, Eva Kleczyk, PhD. You can check in, you can reach out to me, and we can connect. You can also go onto Facebook, and you can type in Voices of Impact with Dr. E. This is my page where I post interesting topics, as well as where my podcast is also being done as well. And then finally on Instagram, you can do Dr. Eva Kleczyk, and you can find me and you can connect with me there as well. So there is multiple places depending what platform you're using or the level you want to be interacting with me. So thank you.
Definitely, I'll have all the links connected to that. And thank you so, Doctor, for your time, and a pleasure having you today.
Thank you so much.